Emmanuel Osemaka, Country Director of Social Welfare Network Initiative. Thank you for joining us.
It's my pleasure again.
Well, you have been very active in working with the internally displaced persons across the country. You've talked about this issue before, about the fact that the conditions in the camps are dire.
Yeah.
So what's your take on this humanitarian crisis that has been predicted?
Well, you're looking at it vis-a-vis the protest by the IDPs in Meduguri, or in total?
Just give it to us in total.
That's definitely one angle.
Okay, well, okay, let me take it from that aspect first. One, for us, it didn't come as a surprise. A lot of us have actually been waiting for it to happen.
But the protest?
Yes, because there are a whole lot of misgivings, even by the IDPs, of course, by the humanitarian actors themselves, and on what exactly is wrong with the systems and structures that the government is implementing within the camps. Don't forget that government only takes care of directly 8% of the IDPs population. The remaining 92% is outside of the camp. In fact, the numbers is actually reduced significantly because a lot of the people who were in the IDP camps have moved out. So, and now within Meduguri, you had camps that were hitherto in schools, and they've been merged with a lot of the bigger camps. So you have Bakassi camp housing a lot of IDPs who were prior now in schools, so as to be able to open up the schools. So Bakassi camp used to house about 20-something thousand IDPs. Now they're about 50,000 plus.
So which one of the camps staged the protest? That's what we see now.
You have the farm center where you have people from Marite. Usually, predominantly, it was actually IDPs from Marite that went on this protest initially. Then they were followed up by the ones in NYC. Then, of course, yesterday was Bakassi. You had Bakassi camp where there were a lot of riots and cars were burnt and all that. All of that put together is as a result of the failure of the committee, the government, failure to feed them appropriately. On paper, it says that IDPs are meant to be fed 3 times a day. Mm-hmm. But the first meal comes between 2 and 3, sometimes 4 p.m.
The first meal of the day?
Yes, that's the truth. So they've put up with this for a very, very long time. And that
meal, is it for the adults or for the children?
All. And that first meal is, you've heard some of them talk about that sometimes they just make rice with salt for them to eat. I do not know the nutritional content of just pure rice. Rice is starch. No, nothing to go with it. Sometimes if you see the kind of food the children are even fed with, you won't eat it. I've had the privilege of going on an assessment where we had to do food testing in the camps. I couldn't taste the food. It's sad. And it was based on some of the conversations we've had over time and some of these findings that we also decided that, look, fine, they are not doing as much as we expect them to do. Even though loads of funds have been given for this. We decided to come up with our own One Love project, which is why we began the breakfast feeding program in a few. We are so small, but we're able to look at areas where you have, heavy needs, and from the crowds funding we have, we're able to take care of the much we can. But even at that, still, the situation is so huge that I really don't know. Honestly, because I know that there are a lot of us who are working outside the camps, and those interventions outside of the camp is working.
So there are interventions outside the camp?
Yes, there are 92% of the IDP population.
Who's reaching them?
The INGOs are reaching them. Mm-hmm. My organization is reaching them, and several other local organizations, they are reaching them.
Which is definitely good news, because there had been concerns as to, it looked like all the focus was on the people in the camps, and people wondered, do you have to be in the camp for you to get government attention or for you to get any sort of attention? So it's definitely heartwarming to note that, the people outside the camps are getting, some. But when we hear that in the camps, the first meal of the day will come at 2 o'clock or 4 o'clock. That's definitely very disturbing news.
Yes, it is.
And you also have to ask, because one of the things that the governor was said to have done was dissolve the committee, because when you listen to some of the complaints that came from there, they said that when the governor is around, they seem to do the right thing. When the government goes or the governor goes away, they're back to status quo. What exactly, is the problem in that particular regard? Is it the structure that's been put in place?
I mean, you can't run away from the structure. It's all structure. What we've discovered is that the major problem with the government-controlled camps is that, first, they have the smallest size of the IDPs to take care of. And what we've discovered is that the structure is wrong from our inception. Let me compare it with what you have outside, then of course to explain it. Outside the camp, you have 92% of the IDPs in host communities, in people's homes and all that in different locations. And these people have been identified by humanitarian actors, so headed by OCHA. So OCHA does the coordination of activities in these locations. So if you go to Borno right now, you have a chart that explains to you who is where and who is doing what, and who are the targets. So they have also been mapped in terms of based on the local government. So, and the structure is put in place in that respect to take care of intervention from A to Z. So first, before you begin any intervention, indicators are identified. You need to be also understand exactly what the needs are, who is where, and of course the IDPs are involved in the entire structure. So the structure also, what do you call it now, takes cognizance of the fact that on the way you may have need to tweak and change your strategy, because sometimes things can change. But in the government, in the bureaucracy, what you have is a politically motivated or politically supported system where the governor appoints people not because based on competence, but based on political patronage, or because they are his friends who do not have the competence to do the job. So they come in, they pick people who do not even understand what it is to feed IDPs. So when you're talking malnutrition, they don't even know what you're saying.
From the records we have here, about 2.5 million people are in need of nutrition.
Yes.
From the UN records.
Yes.
And you need about $15.5 million to take care of that.
Yeah.
That's for the remainder of the year.
Yes.
How much has been spent in the Northeast, in your own opinion?
From the records we have, I think it was the US that put it together, I think about 53 billion so far has been spent in the last, 5 years.
How much of that was spent on food and nutrition?
Less than 2% of that.
So we're now in a more dire state than we were before.
Yes.
How do we go forward real quickly as we wind down?
We've said it severally, and I will repeat it again. If what we have outside the camp is working, why don't we just copy it? It's simple. The Dangote food that was brought in for distribution, yes, they were distributed, but how? If several trailer loads of food items were brought in and distributed to IDPs household by household, and it worked to those, as many as got it, were able to have some measure of mitigation in their life. What happened to those that didn't get it? Because not everybody got it. And why didn't everybody get it? So these are some of the questions we need to ask, and government need to ask themselves and find out exactly, because right now we expect that some people should be arrested. We expect that some arrests ought to have been made, and people need to be shamed.
Well, you think that there's some criminal negligence there?
I do not think there are criminal elements within the system. People have been mercantiling with the IDPs, for God's sake. People have been stealing directly from using the IDPs for their own personal interest. And they are encouraged by the system. Because if you have a system that encourages nepotism, in the appointments of people who will take care of humanitarian issues as this, for God's sake, in this sector, you don't look for religion, ethnicity, tribe, or political affiliation. You look for competence, because you have a problem and you need solution. And solution can only come, sustained solution can only come from those who have the requisite capacity and competencies.
All right. Thank you very much, Mr. Emmanuel Osemaka, Country Director of the Social Welfare Network Initiative. Thank you for speaking with us.
It's my pleasure. Yeah.